Thank you. Hi, Jonas. Hi.
So please have a seat. Comfortable here between you two.
Absolutely.
How are you feeling today?
Great.
Great. Good to be here. So we're talking about digitalization, of course. Now, let me tell you something you already know. Now, the world is becoming ever more connected, ever more complex. That's, of course. Billions of devices and machines generate massive amounts of data. And they kind of create a bridge between the virtual and the real world, I guess we can say, which you can also see here on display here at the Siemens booth. Now, these devices are becoming ever more smarter, thanks to artificial intelligence or also technological autonomy. Now, observers agree that this is just the beginning of digitalization. So I think it's fair to ask, is digitalization a chance, or is it rather a threat? Now, we heard some of your thoughts on the topic. How about you?
Well, I mean, I clearly see it as a chance. And many people are scared because they believe technology pushes people and people's work aside. And my point is, number one is, we have to have in mind that the labor market globally is declining due to this fact that we are living in an aging society. So in order to keep our momentum, our growth momentum, we have anyhow to find ways how to get, let's say, more productivity with less adding labor, number one. And number two, it will be a change, and there will be a change how we are working, how people are working, but it's a positive one. I mean, less heavy lifting if you talk about robots, which are taking away some work, which is maybe you don't want to have. But it's really, at the end of the day, driving more productivity, maintaining the growth momentum, and then also taking sure that each generation has a little bit of a better life than before. And this is driven by technology, as was it in the past.
So each generation gets better, each generation gets smarter. Yes, Mr.
I think it was the Dalai Lama who once said, "What is." And to me, that's very true about technological development in general. I mean, consider electricity. We can use electricity to make toast,
right,
or kill people.
Right.
We can use the internet to educate large masses of people who previously lacked education, or we can distribute child pornography with the internet. So the internet is, digitization is, and I think it's basically up to us to turn it into an opportunity and not into a threat.
So it's basically what each individual makes of it, right? So how does the role of the human being look like in a fully digitalized world? We just said it's not just about trying to create a growth without, what did we say, growth without people. What does it look like? What are we looking for? New skills, new talents? What is that going to look like?
In short, I mean, I would say that digitization will sort of deal with the hard stuff. So the new hard stuff will be the soft stuff. I mean, if you consider something like online poker, and I'm not a big online poker player, but I have friends who are into it. And if you go back in time, the best poker players were basically card counters. It's a little bit of psychology, but in essence, it was math and statistics. Today, with a kind of software that basically any online poker player has access to, that stuff is like a toilet. I mean, the software will do the card counting for you. So instead, it's the soft stuff. It's about reading the other players. And I think those are the kind of skills where, at least so far, the human being has a competitive advantage in relation to the computer. So the last competitive advantage of man may actually be the emotional, soft, fluffy kind of stuff.
How about from a perspective from Siemens?
Well, I think I have to make a little bit of a sidestep. So if we talk about digitalization, we have to have in mind that still the major part of our world will be not digital.
Right.
I mean, a car can be as autonomous as it will be. You still have tires. You will still have a metal sheet around you and seats. If you talk about digitalization industry, the power supply will still be there. We talk about electrons. You still have electrons running through substations and fuses. So that means that part will not go away. But the point would be, the devices we are talking about are getting more intelligent, as you said. Again, take an autonomous car. A car is already very intelligent. If it's really autonomous, it's maybe 100,000 times more intelligent and has more sensors and actuators and intelligence in it. Same happens to our devices, the field devices, which you see all over the place here. They're getting more intelligent. And in doing so, they fulfill different roles than they did in the past, firstly. Secondly, you will get much, much more information from the way how they're performing, how they're doing, how they're contributing to the whole value chain. And from that, if you do it in the right way, smart enough, then you can deduct, make out this information, valuable information, and then drive it into really improving your business. So that means the way it's changing, the world is changing, the demand for more, let's say, software skills will increase, but still, it will still drive growth also on the more traditional part at the same time.
By the way, if you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen, we do have 2 microphones that we're willing to hand out, so don't hesitate to ask whatever you'd like to know. Now, I'd like to build a bridge between what you said before with the Terminator and artificial intelligence. Now, the impact of artificial intelligence isn't that clear yet. Thinking of Terminator and the movies and the dreams and the ideas some people have, is this more a chance, or can it actually be a threat if you think about humans actually getting stupider with growing and smarter devices from year to year?
I mean, again, I would say what is. I mean, it's happening. It's basically how we deal with it that determines whether it will be a threat or an opportunity. I mean, my worry would be, and this more from a corporate leadership point of view, that we're going to end up in a fairly sterile kind of environment. There's a lovely story from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book, where they ask the computer the questions, what's the meaning of life? And after a couple of 100,000 of years of calculating this, they end 42. Up with the number 42.
42.
Yeah, and that would be my worry, that we're going to deal with something which is, at the end of the day, really about human relationships. I mean, business at the end of the day is about that, in a way that makes it sort of sterile and anti-human, and that would be sort of my worry. For sure, information can help us, but typically, when you have a lot of information, you have a meeting, and then you decide that the outcome of a meeting is to collect more information and have another meeting, and have another meeting, and another meeting. So there's this risk for sort of analysis paralysis that comes as an effect of all this.
Kind of sounds like your schedule, your daily schedule, meeting from meeting to meeting to meeting. Does that have to do with it?
Yeah, sort of. I think, I mean, again, I said it's not a threat, it's an opportunity. And sometimes people worrying about that robots are, let's say, taking over. I mean, they are so intelligent, they reproduce themselves and so on. I think worrying about this is something like worrying about overpopulation of the Mars.
Right. Okay.
It's far away.
So many of the technologies that are currently determining digitalization have a big impact on certain industries and on certain individuals. What would you say is the technology with the biggest impact right now?
It depends, doesn't it? It depends on what industry you're looking at. It depends on what part of the world we're in. I mean, consider Africa. I was at another Siemens conference in Hong Kong just a few weeks ago. And in Africa today, we have about 1 billion people. 60% of those people lack energy. Mm-hmm. They lack electricity. So if you're in Africa, I mean, digitization for sure can help a number of African countries to leapfrog certain stages that typically European countries went through. But for them, I would say that electricity is still the most important technology. So it depends very much on where you happen to be in the world. That would be sort of my initial response to that question.
And from your point of view?
I think, I mean, as you said, I strongly believe that the energy sector is one which is benefiting most from, on the one side, going more digital, on the other side, going more decentral, smaller devices, and decentral means also using more renewables, which is available. And it really boosts a lot of countries which are just on its verge to developing, number one. The second biggest impact, I believe, is, and that you can see here, obviously, is on the whole manufacturing and process industries, because this is a huge demand of being more productive, being faster, and the time to market more personalized. And a third one, which I would pick, would be cities. The way how we are living in cities, and the cities, there's an urbanization trend going on, which puts a tremendous amount of pressure on infrastructure. Is it power supply? Is it how to move people and goods within a city? Is it on buildings, living? That has a tremendous opportunity to get really, let's say, relief from the stress of increasing population, at the same time make a more livable place. And that happens all over the world.
So if we think about the thing I said at the beginning, observers agree that we're just at the beginning of digitalization. Do you think the groundwork has been done, sufficiently done, for further growth and utilization?
Again, it depends. I mean, it's such a general question. I think to some extent, where we lack still is in education. I mean, that's sort of my background. I used to be in academia. In reality, the schoolhouse of the future will probably look like this. And it's neither school nor house, but it's still extremely powerful. I think, for some odd reason, education is lacking here when it should be the spearhead. And we probably need to redefine the entire concept of learning, unlearning, and relearning, really, because at the end of the day, gone are the days when you could get this huge overdose of training and education up to the age of 22, 23, and then supposed to be high-flying on that overdose for the next 40 years. In addition to that, as we're growing older, most people will probably have to consider having dual careers, not the traditional concept of dual careers within a relationship, but if we're going to work until the age of 80, do you really want to do the same thing for 60 years? So maybe we also need to change the entire educational system so that we can go back when we're sort of our age, around 50, and perhaps retrain and become an architect or a school teacher.
Is this just generally speaking, or I mean, you get around a lot, or are there countries where you say, hey, they're just a bit ahead with the education system? They're doing it right. They're on the right track.
To some extent, I guess it has something to do with the aging population. So certain countries tend to have to ask those kind of questions right now. So Sweden, my home country, for sure, we have to consider it. Japan, definitely with the aging population. And then they're doing some interesting stuff in China as well. And then we have the US. So I think we see islands of creativity where we're thinking about how to redesign education rather than one big center.
Yep. So, I mean, coming back to your question, I think there's a couple of elements. Number one is, are we prepared regarding technology development? I think yes. I mean, if you think about the cost and the availability of process power, I mean, we are creating data center everywhere. It's almost unlimited now. The same holds true for the cost of connectivity and all that stuff. That's fine. Secondly, you need to have a certain kind of standards in order to make these devices talk to each other. There's a lot of things going on. Industry 4.0 is one thing, IIC in the United States. I think we are making progress there, and that's good, we need it. And the third element, and I would fully subscribe to your point, is where I believe it's lacking is the amount of education and training. And this goes all ranks, from the top artificial intelligence scientists, and I mean, they are really, we cannot get enough. They get a, scarce resource, though they get paid like hell. Down to the ranks on blue-collar worker, which have a different work. Have in mind, digitalization is also increasing the speed with which we are changing. But that means also we have to increase the speed with which people are learning. And this is not reflected yet in our education and training, schools, environments, infrastructure. We really have to speed up there. It's a transformation.
We have a question from the audience. Can we get him a microphone over here? Right in the front, first row? That'd be great. So that everybody can hear? Right over here. Thank you.
Dr. Ridderstråle, you pointed out the effect that we would see in education. Dr. Busch, you pointed out where the levers for digitalization would be and will be. The question I'm asking myself each and every day is, digitalization is so much more. John Nesbitt said it or put it very right when he said, we're starving for information, but we're drowning in data. It's not just handing out handouts to pupils that makes digitalizations. It's rather, I think, asking the right questions. What is it that we need to answer? And then digitalization can be means to answering that, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And this is the reason why what we believe in and what we are also, what you can see in our booth is that we are bringing domain know-how together with data analysts, sometimes people who have no clue about how a process or manufacturing line looks like, but we bring them together with domain experts, put them in a room and let them really think about how can I drive productivity, how can I have a better asset management, how can I have an uptime for my trains to increase it. And if you bring these two disciplines together, asking the right questions, as you correctly said, then you come up with brilliant solutions. So it's this kind of co-location which makes a big, big difference. So this is the reason what I'm also telling to the people who are working in industry for 20 years. They say, am I obsolete now because some artificial intelligence guys are doing my job? I don't think so. I think it's really getting these expertise together and make something great out of it.
Anything you'd like to add?
Maybe two things. I mean, when there's an abundance of information and perhaps even an abundance of knowledge, what becomes scarce? Well, wisdom, because I think wisdom there is a clear lack of in the world today. Attention is becoming a very, very scarce resource, which I think matters to just about anyone. Basically, it doesn't depend really on what you do. The second thing is the changing constellations in which we need to work and the kind of demands that will put on people. I mean, historically, you ended up in a network and you stayed in that network as an individual or as a company. And I think perhaps we should learn something from the world of internet dating. I guess everyone is familiar with the world of internet dating, or at least you have friends who have told you about the world of internet dating. They have some interesting acronyms in the world of internet dating. My friends have told me. MBA, which doesn't stand for Master of Business Administration, but married but available. There's also MBL, which is married but looking. And I think that's the kind of mentality we all need as an individual or as a corporation. Yes, we're married to our current partners, our suppliers, our key customers, so on and so forth. But in addition to that, I think we need to be a little bit more promiscuous, create a network of mistresses and lovers that are sort of options for the future. Because if the world is unpredictable, and genuinely so, we can't really know the kind of relationships that we need a month or a year down the road.
This is just something he heard about, all right?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'd like to add something to that though too, and there I come back to your major screw-up award of the year. Isn't that also something that should be cultivated more in companies to be allowed to fail? I mean, isn't that something that is also lacking everywhere?
Yeah, you would actually be surprised by the number of companies that have something similar to this MSU award. They typically call it something a little bit different. And in many cases, it's actually the CEO who accepts the first award because that sort of legitimizes the fact that it's okay to make mistakes, so long as it's not the same mistake over and over and over again.
Right.
So I think things are changing. I mean, the days, I believe, at least for successful companies, are over when you went out and punished people for making mistakes.
Okay. Same?
I mean, it's a cultural difference. In Germany, I lived for a while in China. In China, I recognize that people are trying something, and if it's not working well, they try it a little bit different, and within 3 iterations, they will get there. In Germany, you really sit down, make a perfect design, and run it through it. Takes a long time, and then it's really good. And the next time we think we can do it even better, we throw it away the first one and make a brand new one and think it through again. So real innovations might come through this path, but if you really want to drive something fast, you might want to iterate, and that means failing also at the same time. So the culture of not always winning, but also award something if you fail, or give it a second try and say, look, you learned something now, try it again. That's something which we have to encourage very much so. And this is about innovation. If you start an innovation process, I mean, if you hit 1 out of 10, you're really good. So that means, obviously, by starting already, you know that 9 times you're failing somehow. So
how's the culture at Siemens? How do they... How do the colleagues
How would the colleagues say?
say?
It's great. Here we go. I think we can be better there. I mean, it's not that we every time somebody fails we throw them out, and so we give people definitely a second chance, a third chance. It's more about the behavior, how the people are dealing with it, whether they make a really, let's say, mistakes, but really trying to go for the right things for the company. And then sometimes it happens. That's fine. Then we go forward. So therefore, I think we can be better, but we are in a good way.
Any questions from the audience here we can take in between? One more thing I'd like to ask about the thing we saw in your presentation also, dreams. What are your dreams for the future when you look at digitalization? What does it look like for you personally?
My personal dream is to become the next Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but the only thing we have in common now is that I'm injured too. In terms of digitization, I think my dreams are more about what it can do for the less developed parts of the world, really, and how it can be a liberating force, and how we already see it as a liberating force. I mean, consider the Arab Spring and how the most popular internet dating site in Libya enabled the rebels to communicate initially and then eventually overthrow Gaddafi. Look at how digitization is changing the role of women in the world, where now women are becoming much more of a force to be reckoned with all over the place. And I think, if anything, we're going to see my sort of key trend for the future is feminization, and how women basically will take over the world, and digitization is playing an important role in doing that.
They basically run the world already, women, right? I mean, it's just the way it is. How about you, Mr. Bush?
Well, let me go back to our sustainability program, which is about profit, people, and planet, to really give you my dream. Of course, number one is my dream is that we are really helping our customers to really improve the way how they do business, as well as societies, so that we are really supporting societies in growing in a sustainable way. Is it in the energy area, but also in the healthcare area, where I believe there's a tremendous pressure, cost pressure, in order to really get affordable healthcare to people, and coming back to cities at the same time to really create a livable place. And at the same time, saving resources, which brings me to the planet part, that we do that we are driving growth without running this growth on, let's say, our resources. And that's something which is really a problem. It's not only in the energy area, any kind of resources. So therefore, I believe strongly that digitalization and the way how we drive it is making a big contribution in order to do so.
All right. Any last questions, chances? Now, if you want to know. Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, that will wrap up our panel discussion here for now. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to thank Dr. Jonas Ridderstråle for coming out today, and also Dr. Ronald Busch for handing us the stage, and for the wonderful stand and everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.